So this week in movies, first the Snyderverse dies, and now the Netflix stuff is starting to get on shaky ground. We also have James Cameron keeping a little surprise close to the chest for us. We're going to talk about what that surprise probably is. The return of the living dead situation really needs to be addressed as well. We're going to get to that in a bit more in movies this week. Hello nerds! You have found the place for all of the nerdy movie updates worth talking about. More than just comic book movies, though that is a good chunk of what we cover here in the news. We get nerdy about all kinds of movies, as well as the art of making movies in general. If you like this kind of news reporting, then go check out the full show over on the main channel called The Week in Nerddom, where we talk about TV and comic books and gaming and rumors and etc., everything in between. You can find the link to that down in the description or at the end of this video. Now, let's hear about all that movie goodness, shall we? We do have some follow-ups and corrections. Follow-ups. Deadpool and Wolverine has broken into the $1 billion club. It is almost, as of doing research for this, so I don't know exactly where it is right now as I'm filming, so it might have passed this, but almost beating Joker for the highest grossing R-rated film ever. So we'll probably keep a little bit of tabs on this for a little while longer until it's no longer relevant, but this is huge. This actually plays into the rumor mill a little bit later as well, and we'll get to that in the speculation portion of the rumor mill, but Deadpool's gigantic. Deadpool and Wolverine. If you haven't seen it at least once by this point, you really should. But that's what we got on that one. Let's talk next about Zack Snyder and the Army of the Dead. So this is not a perfect movie. It was definitely not a perfect franchise either, but we were supposed to get a franchise. We got 2 movies in the Army of the Dead franchise, and now Netflix has officially killed it. Zack Snyder has confirmed that himself in a recent interview. There is no longer going to be any other spin-offs in this franchise, presumably because the Rebel Moon stuff was not very well received. And it's interesting that it's coming out now after the director's cut of the Rebel Moon movies has been released. First, the Snyderverse dies, which kind of amen to that. I was not a fan of the Snyderverse, but I was, though, a little bit of a fan of the Army of the Dead franchise. I feel like he was doing something interesting with the zombie tropes. And there was, honestly, he later said in this same interview that there was going to be a crossover between Army of the Dead and Rebel Moon, should he get deep enough into both of them, which sounds like it was only going to be a couple of movies more that we're going to have to sit through before we saw this crossover, which sounds kind of like an interesting idea, but it's never going to happen now. We might not even get any more Rebel Moon stuff, but we'll see. Only time will tell with that one. From there, though, we have, this one breaks my heart a little bit. Fixed. We talked about this movie when it was originally announced. Fixed. Genndy Tartakovsky, who is the guy that brought us Samurai Jack, Dexter's Laboratory, the Star Wars Clone Wars animated series, the animated short episodes. I think they were like 10 to 15 minutes each. Those ones, all of this stuff. Genndy Tartakovsky does some amazing modern animation that works on so many levels. You can watch it as a kid because it's not offensive, it's not gross. Well, I think Primal maybe isn't for kids, but Samurai Jack, I think, is the prime example of what he can do as far as making something geared towards everyone in a way that is meaningful to everyone. Kids like it, adults like it. That is a prime example of who Genndy Tartakovsky is as a creator. Primal is also fantastic. He has a couple other things going on there, but the big one is this was going to be his first proper movie, and that is Fixed. Fixed was going to be an adult animated, so very adult oriented humor about a dog getting fixed. And it is no longer being distributed through Warner Brothers. This is another L that Warner Brothers is just taking. They're no longer distributing this. It has fallen back to Sony, who is the production house that put up the money for this movie to be made. So the movie is still getting made as far as it sounds, but the distribution will no longer be through Warner Brothers. Presumably they're going to go through some other distribution house, though that very much remains to be seen at this point. It could just get shelved, or Sony could put it out themselves. A lot of stuff is up in the air with this one, but it still breaks my heart a little bit because there is the possibility that we won't get to see more Genndy Tartakovsky brilliance. And that's just a bad day for the world, honestly. Then let's talk a little bit about D23. We have The Incredibles. The third volume of The Incredibles was announced at D23. That's just, we just had to mention that just because it sounds pretty awesome. There's a little teaser, but it doesn't really count because it's like 10 seconds and you see the family. That's about it. The other thing in here is Wolfs, the new Brad Pitt, George. Yeah, I did not say that incorrectly. WOLFS is how the movie is spelled. But the new Brad Pitt, George Clooney movie is already gotten a green light for a sequel, even though the first movie has not yet been released. But I mean, come on, Brad Pitt, George Clooney together on screen again. I don't think you can miss with this one, though it is, possible. That's what we got though for follow-ups and corrections. Let's get into trailers. Like I said, D23 happened, so there's a lot of trailers to talk about. A lot of trailers have leaked. We're not necessarily going to talk about the leaked ones. I haven't watched the leaked ones because reasons. I'll watch them when they are officially released. But it's interesting to know that some of this stuff is leaked. We got the Captain America Brave New World. Woo! The Captain America Brave New World trailer leaked, so you get to see Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk. The more interesting one I think here is Tron. Tron Ares trailer has leaked, and the big takeaway from this leak is that we now know for sure that 9 Inch Nails has been brought in to do the soundtrack. So Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross has been brought in to do the soundtrack for this movie. So they went from the best EDM group ever in Daft Punk doing the last movie, which the soundtrack was better than the movie. The movie's not bad. We've recommended it as a watch here on the channel, but the soundtrack by far outshines the movie. This time, though, I think it's an interesting clue to the shift of the tone of the movie, because Daft Punk is kind of, like I said, EBM, so electronic body music. This is the stuff that makes you want to dance and move and be happy and do things. 9 Inch Nails, not so much with the happy. So very interested. And, you also have Jared Leto as the lead in this one. So also very interesting here. If you want to go find a breakdown of what exactly happens in the trailer, or maybe scan through Reddit and see if they haven't pulled down all the instances of the trailer being published there, then by all means go do that. We're not going to do that here. I don't feel like getting a copyright strike on the channel. And it's just the big takeaway from this is 9 Inch Nails. We can watch the trailer in all of its glory when it's officially released, probably next week or so. From there, we have Snow White. Oh man, live action Snow White. The trailer was finally released here. Oof, this is rough. I don't know if you want to watch this. So Snow White trailer. It's bad. I don't know if there's fixing this one. Maybe they have time to make the dwarves look better, but I mean, in all honesty, they had to rotoscope these animated dwarves over the other dwarves that were just even worse. So I really don't know what's going to happen here. The trailer's not worth watching, though. Save yourself the time. Next up, we have the Fantastic Four First Steps teaser. Very, very short teaser. We got some interesting stuff here that also is going to play into the rumor mill. So if you have not yet watched the teaser trailer, by all means, link in the description. Go check it out. It's pretty cool. I honestly does quite a bit to hype you up, show you that there is some potential here for it to be good. Crossing fingers that potential comes through. Next up is Moana 2. Yeah, that happened. Next up is Mufasa, the Lion King. This is actually the second trailer for this Mufasa movie, and we didn't talk about the first one because, oh man, but the second one, nothing's been fixed, and so I think it deserves at least a little bit of attention because they have established certain things about these characters already in the first movie, the one that came out in the 90s that was, epic and amazing and everybody loves it. And now for this reboot, prequel, they're changing things. Honestly, I'm pretty sure the things that were said in the animated movie were also said in the quote unquote live action adaptation that came out a couple years ago that honestly did not do very well because reasons. But they're not fixing 100% not fixing the visual issues from the last movie, and also not fixing the story issues that were already brought up from the previous trailer. So this one's also going to be pretty terrible. Not going to lie, this is maybe not worth your time either. Continuing on, we have one last trailer. This one is not D23 related. It is Daily Wire related. So if you know who Matt Walsh is, you know what the What is a Woman documentary is, then this is more of the same of that. This one's a little bit different though, because it's titled Am I Racist? So it's Matt Walsh doing the thing to see how the political sides define the term and what exactly quantifies as racism in modern America. Really interesting, very, very trolly. So if you do not align at all with any sort of conservative politics, probably steer clear of this one. If you're curious about the other side, you align liberal, but you or whatever, progressive, however you want to put yourself, you're not conservative at all, not Republican, that's not what we're talking about, just conservative, then check it out, because Matt Walsh is pretty funny. He's a little hard edge on certain things I feel like don't do him any good to be hard edge on, but you know, to each their own. But yeah, still interesting, and the trailer's pretty funny. So that's what we got for trailers this week. Let's talk about some regular ass news. First up, we have Terminator news. Apparently James Cameron has secretly been working on a new Terminator movie, and that's all we know. Why would you just drop that and walk away? What the hell, James Cameron? Yeah, so James Cameron is secretly working on a new Terminator movie. As soon as we get more, we will talk about it, but that was just dropped this last week, so we had to share. Our next piece is Return of the Living Dead. So we have a bit of a Jason Voorhees situation on our hands with the Return of the Living Dead movie, which is really interesting because there was already some issues behind the scenes when this movie was made, because that was where the split for George A. Romero, and I honestly cannot remember his partner's name that made Night of the Living Dead, but Return of the Living Dead was the partner, was not George A. Romero. So I'm going to read you the synopsis that I have here real quick, and then we're going to get into it, just because there's information I want to make sure we touch on, at least in the synopsis, of what's going down, the kind of basic breakdown of it. So a lawsuit has been filed over the rights of the intellectual property for the 1985 comedy horror movie, The Return of the Living Dead. Living Dead Media LLC claims to own the copyright to the original screenplay and the underlying script for the film, as well as other trademarks, i.e. the characters in the film. The company is suing Return of the Living Dead Originals LLC, which was formed in July of this year, so just a month ago, and is allegedly using the credentials of Beverly Dawn Hartley, an actor from the original film, to claim ownership of the intellectual property. The lawsuit also claims that Return of the Living Dead Originals LLC is attempting to interfere with existing contracts between Living Dead Media LLC licensees. So it sounds like, because I did not see the formation of this Return of the Living Dead Originals LLC in the news previously, so it just somehow slipped through the cracks, but it sounds like, what's her name? Beverly Dawn Hartley, I'm pretty sure she's still alive. I don't think she's passed. It sounds like she is at least elemental in the creating of the Return of the Living Dead Originals company, and is trying to capitalize, because the release about this is quite a bit more detailed, but it sounds like she's trying to capitalize on the character she played in this movie. She's been in a number of 80s horror movies. She was kind of a horror queen of the time. So it's very interesting that now she's trying to capitalize on it. But she played, if you've seen the movie, she played the punk rocker who has the very famous line of, do you ever, fantasize about what it would be to be dead? That's a bit of a paraphrase, but you'll know who I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. So that's Nina Hartley. Yeah, so... Oh, this is very interesting. It sounds like she doesn't have a leg to stand on, but the Living Dead Media Company hasn't been doing much as far as renewing the licenses with these, doing much to maintain the license. That's a better word, because they own the license. The renewal happens, but the maintenance of it, their website has been dead for a couple of years at this point. There is supposedly a reboot of the Return of the Living Dead in the works that is being sanctioned by the Living Dead media company, but that we haven't heard about for over a year at this point either, so very much could be in some sort of limbo or just not actually happening. It's a very interesting situation here. We will be keeping passive tabs on this, so if you're interested in things like this, we talked about the Jason Voorhees thing until it was squashed, at least mostly. As it stands right now, the international license for Friday the 13th versus Jason Voorhees is still a little bit up in the air. It still sounds like there are some issues between those two parties internationally, but as far as the states go, they have figured that all out. So that's where that one sits. But this one's going to probably get just as ugly. So we will continue to cover it as things develop. But that is what we have for our regular ass news this week. Let's talk about suggestions. Our suggestion, speaking of James Cameron, is T2 Judgment Day, Terminator 2, the sequel, the I'll be back. And he came back and now he's the good guy. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton. Why can't I think of the kid's name that plays John Connor, but whatever, it is a classic. We are about to get the T-1000 in Mortal Kombat 1 as a playable character. This is peak James Cameron. This is peak 80s into 90s sci-fi. This is just everything about this movie works so well. You have, honestly, visuals that up until very recently still felt super fresh as far as the digital visuals go. Even now, there are only a very small handful of scenes that the visuals don't really work so much anymore. They look dated. It didn't look dated until about 5 to 8 years ago. Honestly, go watch it. It's so freaking fantastic. And then all of the practical effects just work so well being integrated with the digital effects that, like, you're going to be blown away considering this was made in, what, 92, I believe? Yeah, this is absolutely a watch worth your time. Go watch Terminator 2 Judgment Day. That is, why do I need to suggest that even? That brings us to the end of the video, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me for the news. Once again, there is a full and probably much more up-to-date and recent episode of the news, the full-length version, if you will, called The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, linked down in the description, and probably link popping up somewhere around my face right about now. So click on that, go check that out as well, or if you prefer your news in more truncated pieces, then by all means, just stick around here and go check out some of the other stuff we offer on this channel. Thank you very much for joining me. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember, nerds, that if it is generally nerdy, it's probably here.